Hello, and welcome to The Breakdown. My name's Amayanja Fazil. The bombings in Uganda that happened recently cannot be understood if we don't go back a few weeks ago or a few months ago of the events that have been happening in the country. Now, I've been telling people that whatever is happening in Museveni's circle, we always have to pay attention. The people he's meeting, the statements he's making, and all this kind of stuff. Because in those things, that is where a lot of information lies to explain the events that happen later on. Now, a few weeks ago, there's a gentleman who came from the United States of America, a one Howard Graham Buffett, a son to a US billionaire known as Warren Buffett, who was one of the richest people on the earth. Museveni put out a tweet, as well as the Daily Monitor reported, and all these other news channels in Uganda, as well as newspapers, they reported that Museveni has received billionaires who are willing to invest in Uganda. Now, this story caught my attention as an individual who is in Museveni's neck, because I was like, okay, this is a gentleman who has just killed over 60 people last year. He has no approval ratings at all. He has not left the country in a very long period of time, and he's under a lot of pressure because of the way he is handling people that are not agreeing with his narrative in one way or the other. So I was like, okay, maybe Howard Graham Buffett is a legitimate kind of investor that really wants to do business in the country. So I went on Google, and most people hit me hard for that, but that's where the entire information is. And I just entered Howard Buffett's name into Google. Boy, oh boy, what I found about this gentleman is really, really interesting. And that is what I'm here to break down today. Now, Howard Graham Buffett is not an easy gentleman to investigate. And I'm not surprised that media houses in Uganda have not managed to look into this gentleman and his activities. Because this gentleman, he is one of the people who are pursuing or who are working to finance the invasion of the Democratic Republic of the Congo using Museveni. How is this happening, you might ask? Now, to understand Howard Graham Buffett, we need to look at his activities, what he has been doing in the Great Lakes region. Who is he working for? What board of governors or what boards does he sit on? What organizations does he give his money? That is what piqued my attention. And I'm so surprised that media houses and international media houses in Uganda do not look at these issues, because there is something out there that we all need to pay attention to. Now, we know that Museveni is relentlessly selling the war to the Congo. He's relentlessly selling for us to invade Congo, to go and wipe out the ADF. A week before these bombings, this gentleman visited Museveni's state house, wearing in his casual clothing with his mask that could not even fit his face, because you see, like, even the chin was that big that the mask couldn't even fit his face. I think all he needed was a baklava instead of a mask. You might think that he's someone who, has an entire KFC branch at his home. Of course, that is nothing that is, but you can look and see that the greed in this white man is really, really very, very out of this world. Anyway, enough of the semantics. Howard Graham meets Kagame before meeting Museveni. Now, let us connect the dots. When I researched, Howard Graham works with two organizations that do some work in the Congo. One organization is headed by an actor known as Ben Affleck. Then the other organization is headed by some lady known as Susan, but the organization is called Bridgewater Foundation. Now, what I discovered was this. It's not Bridgewater, it is Bridgeway Foundation. Now, what I discovered was this, that when I looked at the leadership of this organization known as Bridgeway that Mr. Buffett gives money to, it is headed by a lady known as Shannon Sedgwick Davis. Now, according to Bridgeway, on their website, this is what they say. They say that their mission is to fight mass atrocities or prevent mass atrocities from happening in the Great Lakes region or in the world. But then you ask yourself, why is it that at their landing page, the landing page of Bridgeway, they have Ugandan soldiers holding hands with young children? What does Bridgeway have to deal with Uganda? That is what I never understood. But as a person who is very curious, I looked further. Now, when I looked at Bridgeway, the organization that Mr. Graham Buffett gives money to, I looked at the leadership. The leadership of Bridgeway has two individuals that were of interest to me. One, Lauren Poole, and the other one known as Adam Finch, or Fink, whatever the name is. So I was interested to read about the portfolios of these particular individuals. Boy, oh boy. When I read, if you go to the website, I will leave the links there. These two guys, Adam Fink and Lauren Poole, have done some work before, or some lobbying work before, or have done some shoddy work before that involved the invasion of the Congo as well as the Central African Republic, work that was financed by the US government in order to counter the Russians and the Chinese in the Central African region. How did this happen? Most of you might not remember this, but if people watching me, you come from northern Uganda, you must remember this. If you have been following the work of Professor Milton Alimadi, you must know about this. If you have watched the documentary by DW known as the US Crusade in Africa, you must know this. What am I talking about? I'm talking about a project that was known as The Invisible Children, that produced a 30-minute propaganda film known as Connie 2012. Now, Connie 2012 was used by a group of, it was written by these young men, Lauren Poole and Adam Finch, as well as another person who actually ran mad, known as Jason something, right? Jason ran mad. These two moved on and joined Bridgeway Foundation. So what happened with the Invisible Children? We all know. You can go and look up Invisible Children. You can even just go on Google and type in Connie 2012 and see what the United States target was under the guise of Connie 2012. Because the United States wanted to get into the DRC. They wanted to get into South Central African Republic. So they created this 30-minute video using these young guys in order to create some sort of propaganda that Connie is the worst enemy in the world, of course, which he is, so the US has to go and take him out. They have never succeeded in taking out Connie. Instead, they deployed the US Marine soldiers under AFRICOM, and what happened was that they started navigating and seeing mines and visiting mining areas in the Congo and going to, writing about business prospects in the Congo and all this kind of stuff. In the end, the world got to know that Connie 2012 and the Invisible Children project was a scam, was a sham, or it was just, it was just used as a guise for something that was much more colonial and was much more interventionist by the US department, by the US government. And that is why you see that the United States was actually giving over $240 million US per year to Invisible Children, as well as to the Connie 2012 project. To do what? That to do research in the Congo. Now, things get even very interesting. I was wondering, where do people get this narrative that there is a connection between the Islamic State as well as the ADF in the Congo, the so-called Islamic State in Central African Republic? You have heard people saying these words. Where does it come from? Who declares that these people are now ISIS? Is it just that we should take their word for it? That, okay, Seka Baluku has said that he is ISIS. And who discovered that Seka Baluku is the leader of ADF? Because we have never seen a video of Seka Baluku. But the only information that we know about the ADF and its leadership, it is a report that was written. It's a report that was written by Bridgeway Foundation in conjunction with other people, as well as the George Washington University. So they wrote this report in March 2021, submitted it to the US Departments of States and all this kind of stuff. And so the United States declared ADF an ISIS affiliate. Now, when you declare ADF a group of ragtag militias or a group of rebels as an ISIS affiliate, what that means, it dictates the intervention. It means that the United States, as well as the European Union and all these other Western countries, have to intervene where ISIS is. That's what it means. But if it's just a group of rebels, for example, if you see that it is just ADF, or if it's just CONI, or if it is just just a rebel movement, they have no right to intervene. But if you had the word ISIS in Cabo Delgado, then Western powers have to intervene, because they believe that it is a much bigger threat internationally than it is for the region. So it becomes a global threat. So that dictates the intervention of the United States of America. So are we seeing another CONI 2012 happening again? Well, this is what is interesting. When you look at the people who wrote the report about extremism, the people who wrote the report, it is these same people of Bridgeway, Adam Finch and Larry Poole, the masterminds behind the CONI 2012 project that led to the US intervention via AFRICOM into the Central African Republic as well as the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where minerals are being exploited right now by American billionaires as well as greedy American imperialists and colonialists that are now ravaging the entire region of the Congo. Does it make sense to you now where this whole thing comes from? And so many people, journalists like I think Joseph Flammerfeld, have written articles. These people are the people who are down there in the Congo, and they are saying that you guys are blowing this entire thing out of proportion. You are concentrating on ADF, and yet there are much bigger problems that are affecting the people of the Congo. Joseph wrote, this journalist, actually, you should go and read these articles. He debunked this entire report that these guys wrote. They were just seated there in Washington and they come up with the report. Now, this is where things get interesting. If you look at Bridgeway as an organization that is whose major aim, so-called aim, is to fight mass atrocities. Where was Bridgeway when Museveni was massacring 60 people last year on November 18th and 19th? They were nowhere to be seen. You know why? Because their mission is not to save mass atrocities. No. Their mission is to work with billionaires and bring them into Africa in conflict regions, create conflicts, and then get these greedy billionaires like the Buffett to come and exploit these kind of things. It is so fascinating to see a group that is working to stop mass atrocities to just have a staff of just 3 people and just a website that doesn't have anything, or annual reports or reports about this and that, or information about this and that. Doesn't that surprise you? These are the same people that are writing about the ADF, that they are now affiliated to ISIS. My friend, open your eyes, listen, open your brains, ladies and gentlemen. This thing has not just started. This thing has been in the pipeline. This thing has been in the making for a very long period of time. And now the narrative is, let us go to Congo, Congo, Congo. That is what they want. As I went this up, how does this all lead back to Buffett, the gentleman we started with, the one who has a KFC branch at his home? You can see from his size anyway. Now, Buffett is the sponsor of Bridgeway Foundation and their research and all that kind of stuff. We also understand Buffett has interests in the Congo. He builds dams and all this kind of stuff. Of course, he's not building dams. He's getting minerals. Secondly, Buffett is the guy that met Museveni. Instead of talking about business in Uganda, he's talking about invading in the Congo. Now, what business does Buffett have? Because if he wants to do business in the Congo, he should go and meet Tshisekedi, not meeting Museveni about the Congo. Why is he meeting Museveni about the Congo if he wants to do business in the Congo? He should be meeting him, Tshisekedi. And this explains why he also met Kagame. A week later, we see bombs going off in the country. What did they talk about? What is it that these two people were discussing? That after this gun runner, because Mr. Buffett is also a gun runner, if you go to the United States of America, you see he has been supplying arms in his, where in Texas, where he stood, I think, for mayor, that kind of stuff. There is some story about him with, running guns. He's a gentleman who is very vast in that area. Because look here, the invasion of the Congo Uganda doesn't have the money to invade Congo. And this explains why we have been building roads there for easy access. Uganda needs money. Museveni needs money to buy arms, to equip these soldiers. The guns have to come from somewhere. The weapons have to come from somewhere. And all this takes money. And that's where Bridgeway, as well as Buffett, comes in. But is this a US policy? Looks like the lobbyists, as well as people like Buffett with their connections, they are working tooth and nail and hard to see that they sell it to the US department, as well as the US leadership and all this kind of stuff. And trust me, it looks like where it is leading, the Americans are buying into this because they want to counter the Chinese as well as the Russians in the region. And now, by Museveni working for the interests of these Western powers, he as well is going to make sure that he gets something in return. Of course, weapons, as well as training, like the intervention you see in Somalia, as well as rerouting the Congo. That is all gonna happen. Above all, we can see that indirectly is also going to start making things like, with the bombs, is going to say, okay, now everyone has to buy gadgets to check bombs and, heighten security and make budget supplements and this and that. I mean, it's a very big scheme. We know how all this works. Now, as I wind up this episode, the reason as to why I come to explain these things is for you to have this information at the back of your heads. That if anything happens, you can easily connect the dots, because there is no journalist in Uganda that is going to do that for you. There is no journalist internationally that is going to do that for you. That is going to compare all these pieces and then bring them together for you to make your own conclusions. Now, for me, I've provided the information for you. There might be something, there might not. The decision is upon you to decide. That why is it that we see a group of people that orchestrated the so-called Invisible Children and Congo 2012 campaign are the same group of people that are orchestrating the so-called narrative of ISIS in the DRC, or the ADF being ISIS, wanting to create the so-called Islamic State in Central African Republic. That is why we see everything does not add up. Everything is not clear. The intentions are not clear. The motives are not clear. The reasons are not clear. And I always watch political pundits, even those within my party, speaking about this entire thing completely without information at all. Because we have seen that most people have not paid attention to this information. The problem with the invasion in the Congo, Museveni's government only relies on finances and money. And that money has to come from somewhere, that is the West. So whenever he gets this sort of support, and whenever he gets this sort of involvement where the US involves him to do his bidding in the region, that improves his legitimacy, as well as it improves his financial muscle. That is where you have to hit hard. That is where you don't have to let things go. Now, I hope you have learned something. And I hope we meet in the next episode. The other two things, I'm looking at starting maybe doing live shows every Sunday in English, and then we can talk about these things. But the other thing I want to speak about in my next episodes is the profiling and the murder of assassinations of Muslims that has resumed officially. And also the fourth suspect. What happened to the fourth suspect? They said that they killed and all this kind of stuff. We will be asking those tough questions in the next video. Let us meet in the next video. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.